What is going on, all you lovely people? We are currently here live, wishing like something that is live. So, while we're waiting for everybody to get in, hey, I just want to give you guys a couple of things to be reminded on. I can't talk today. Don't forget that if you want to vote on what kind of tattoo I will be getting, go to my YouTube page, go to the community, go down, and you will see the voting. That will be ending shortly as we come up on our next milestone, and then we'll be voting on something else. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/lore reloaded, or follow me at facebook.com/lore reloaded. You actually should like me there. But beyond that, we just enjoying the morning, apparently, since that's what the Anti-Trekker says it is. Anti-Trekker, how you doing today, sir?
Yeah. What's the name of this episode?
Yeah, see, I was supposed to look up how to say that before we started, but I forgot how. It is Latin. It is Vis Pacem Bellum, I believe.
And did you translate it?
I did. If you want peace, you'll get war, or something to that effect. Hold on, let me look it up exactly, though, because I know people are going to be calling me out on that. If you want peace, prepare for war. Which somewhat, I guess, makes sense. I think it kind of fits in. They actually did well in that instance. But speaking of the show itself, how'd you like it overall? Before we just jump right into it, what were your thoughts on it?
This was a tough one for me because, on the one hand, the things that they've been improving on, and I said last week that despite everybody thinking that I just want to hate on the show to hate on the show, I think I made it clear last week, and I'm going to reiterate that the show is definitely improving overall, that I'm starting to like the characters a little more as they find their footing. And those things, I would say, are continuing to improve. However, this particular episode was kind of disjointed and kind of a snooze fest. And not to mention, pretty predictable. And so it wasn't that it was horrible, but it was a disappointment compared to the last three episodes, in my opinion. I think that the first three episodes of the show were absolutely horrible. I think that it's improved since then, but this episode was a step backwards for me, and I think that it was just that it just didn't feel like it was going anywhere. And of course, at the end, we know it's all just a setup for next week.
You love jumping to the end. It's just what you are.
That's my biggest thing about and like if you look at two-part episodes, there's been a lot of the, and it's funny because of course Discover was supposed to be the serialized show, like in the the Battlestar Galactica reboot, but it really isn't. It's an episodic show that just has this background thing of the war that's looming in every episode, and this particular episode was just a setup for the next episode, but the problem is that all the good stuff supposedly is going to happen in the next episode. So it'd be like if Best of Both Worlds, one of the best two-parters that Star Trek ever produced, if the entire first episode ended when the Borg cube first showed up, and the last line was Picard saying, "Transmit to Starfleet, we've engaged the Borg." And you're like, wait a minute, I've been sitting around for an hour waiting for the Borg, and they show up and the episode's over.
Sure.
That's, to me, it was very anticlimactic because it was just nothing but setup.
Sure. So people are throwing it out there. Let's go ahead and kind of give a quick synopsis with spoilers on it, and then we'll just...
What's a synopsis?
Synopsis? However you say it.
Yeah.
While we're breaking it down. Okay. So, effectively what occurs is you start off with the Federation, who has now all of a sudden started losing the war because they're now sharing the cloaking technology that you saw on the undead ship, or whatever it's called, the tomb ship, right?
Sarcophagus ship
sarcophagus
is what they
ship. Yeah, so he started sharing all of the cloaking technology, and now you have ships starting to get the heck beat out of them. And so they go to this planet in an attempt to use it as like a sonar in space. We'll get into that, anti-tracker, don't worry, we'll get into it. As a sonar in space so that they can see the ships and they can get the upper hand, start winning again. Of course, that goes all pear-shaped, as they would say in the British vernacular, and ultimately they end up with facing off against the sarcophagus ship. So let's break it down how we get there. Now, one thing I did enjoy is when it started out really strong, especially when it's always a good day when they start out with the graphics, right? And all of the fancy technology that they can use. You start out with this ship who's getting the living heck beat out of it by a couple of other Klingon ships. The Klingon birds of prey, you can tell they're Klingons birds of prey because they look exactly like they did and how they've always looked, right? And
you really want me to punch you, don't you?
Right. I do. And then, all of a sudden, the ship's getting the heck beat out of it. Do you remember the name of the ship?
I do not, although it's funny because it was a much better looking ship than the Discovery. I see you got it on the screen there. That is a Federation ship right there. That looks like a Federation ship. It's one of those ironic things that the worst looking ship on this show is the main ship. But
right.
Sorry, I harp on the look at Discovery a lot, but it is just a giant triangle with a miniature saucer on it, and it looks just ridiculous.
People are just going to hate you in the comments, so I don't really care.
Yeah, I know.
So all of a sudden the Discovery shows up. I really like that. I thought this was very, very strong. We finally see why the Discovery is worth anything. You have this lone ship. It's trying to get away. The Discovery all of a sudden appears and starts taking hits for it. Now, I have to be honest. The battle was obviously not going well, and I completely expected the captain to say, well, we gave it our best shot. We can't save this ship. Time to go. I was really surprised that not only did he stay, but he started putting his ships in harm's way, which was a very Starfleet thing to do. It would be something I would expect of any captain. Were you surprised by that, or did you expect him to continue to fight? I did not expect him to continue fighting as soon as it was obvious that this was going downhill very, very fast.
Some of it, I think that I don't know if I would say surprised as much as because I think it's a natural progression of what they've been doing with Lorca. I think that when they first brought Lorca in, they were trying to make him this evil, anti-captain kind of character, and they've been gradually pushing him more towards being a real captain. Like in even the last episode when he agreed to save the whale despite the fact that he had more important things to do. They're trying to make Lorca a more likable character, and I think they're doing a good job with that. In fact, they're working on trying to make all the characters more likable, and overall, they've done a good job in improving them. Michael Burnham, I still don't find her likable, but at least she's not as cringeworthy as she was in the earlier episodes. So I thought this episode had such a strong opening. That's one of the reasons I was so disappointed by the rest of the episode. The battle was cool, even though it was like, wait a minute, now all the Klingon ships have cloaking devices.
We're going to get into that. Hold on, we're not
right. Well, we're in the battle, and they were all cloaked. All six ships. Apparently, and I know you mentioned this while we were watching it. For some reason, they couldn't fire blind. Right. And even though they did that in the original series, you can fire phasers without having a lock. That just means that they're less accurate.
Well, let me ask you this, and maybe it was a misunderstanding. It kind of made it seem like, sir, they're cloaked, and I have it on screen. It's not. It may not be there yet.
Right, and you could see it. That's the thing.
But that's my thing. So if you can see it, you're telling me they've designed their ships so it has to lock on before it fires. That seems like a major flaw to me.
Right.
And so it wasn't just me on that, where it's like they got the cloak up so we can't lock on, so we can't fire.
I'm going to give them a little bit of a pass on this, only because I'm thinking that it was a miscommunication between the writers and the visual effects people. That's what kind of like in the original series when, the phasers would come out of the wrong spot on the Enterprise or something. I think that it's something like that, because the whole point here was that these ships were cloaked, and then when he looked in front of them, you could see the dang ships. It didn't make any sense. why they were saying we can't fire. And you even see the targeting reticle on the visible ship. And she's saying she couldn't fire because, and notice they never say the word cloak. They say invisibility screens. And I'm sure that that's simply because they're saying, oh, see, it's still within canon because we never mentioned cloaking devices.
Right, because you think that would come up at some point. It's like, oh, look, the Romulans have cloak. We haven't seen that since the Klingon War.
Right, when all of the Klingon ships were cloaked.
when we were winning, and all of a sudden they discovered this technology that made it all useless. So I liked the fighting too. Again, I think Lorca really shines in this, and I hope that they don't get rid of Lorca. I hope he stays a character and has an arc and isn't replaced or anything like that. Because I like Lorca, especially as a hero here. His shining moment for me in this is when they take the two. They know that the bigger ship is coming, right? I forget if
they just refer to it as a Klingon destroyer.
Yeah, so they know a bigger ship is coming. They're not just dealing with birds of prey, and he jumps right in front, even though his shields are at like 10%. They jump right in front of two torpedoes to try to take them, and he stays there even though he knows the ship can't warp away. I thought that was very strong. I really enjoyed that. Mm-hmm. Then, what was awesome, it continues. This scene is just really awesome. The ship's destroyed. Right. And they get the heck out of Dodge because there's no reason to stay there anymore. And then immediately after, I think the reactions to that was done really well too. He says, we don't have time to grieve about this. There'll be another time for it. But you can see the crew is just, destroyed by this. And I thought it was done really well when it comes to that.
Me too. That's why I said I think that they've really improved Lorca a lot in the last few episodes. And this episode, I think Lorca felt like a bona fide Starfleet captain. And yes, he's damaged goods because of what happened to him in the past, but at the same time, he's working through it and he knows what his job is. And yeah, I see that you brought up the torpedo hit there on the screen. But overall, yeah, that whole opening sequence was some of the best stuff we've seen on this series so far, in my opinion, is in terms of the combat stuff, and it was a big character moment for Lorca. You really got into, and because I know, some people say, well, Star Trek's not all about action, and it's not. But if you use the action sequences to show a side of the character, then it's not just gratuitous starship porn. It's, in this case, we got to see Lorca, the way he thinks about combat. He is going to do everything he can until it's done. And then he's like, okay, it's done. We're gone. And he's a person who values life, who thinks that he needs to do what's right. But the second that the battle is over, he's not going to stick around and fight just to fight.
Right. He doesn't want to. He's not going to put his crew in unnecessary danger if there's no reason to. Get some.
Despite the fact that Discovery seems a little OP in this battle sequence because, just like before, I mean the Klingon birds of prey, which seem to be 90% of the Klingon Empire for some reason, the Discovery was taking them down like flies. It was. Really, they're more of an annoyance than anything else. The only ship that posed any kind of threat was the destroyer, and I think that Discovery probably could have taken the destroyer down, but what's the point? Why endanger the ship when we have a war to win? Right,
because if the Discovery goes down, then they lose, or at least they've made it believe that if the Discovery goes down, they lose. So, and I got it pulled up right now. It's going to take a second for you, but it's gone, and then the ship is blown up. The next piece I thought was really interesting, and I enjoyed as well. Even after this battle, it kept going pretty strong for a lot of the show, where it shows Stamets, and he just jumped him out, and he walks out, and Tilly says something to him because she's controlling it, and he says, "Why are you down here, Captain?" Now let me ask you a question, because here's a thought. So it almost makes me want to believe that it may be alternate universe, because maybe for a second he thought he was in the wrong universe. What if he was, for a moment, in a universe where Tilly was captain? Did that ever come up to you, out of curiosity?
I wasn't thinking alternate universe, to be honest with you. I was actually thinking that Stamets is jumping around through time. Remember, in the Harry Mudd episode, they do establish that Stamets does not exist in the quote-unquote normal timeline, and that's why he was immune to the effects of Mudd's time resetting. So I'm thinking that Stamets was actually remembering events that are from the future when Tilly is a captain. And which I think makes perfect sense because, Tilly's whole life's dream is to be a captain. And notice they've really toned down the stupidity of her character. She's, definitely in this episode, she is not just the fluffy comic relief. She's actually, a competent officer, even though she shouldn't be a cadet, and that's a whole other story. But but since if her ambition, and if she's this talented, this driven and everything, and she wants to be a captain, she will be, unless she gets killed. And so I think that Stamets remembering her being a captain from the future would make perfect sense.
Well, and just to address something Daniel Bardazone said, I heard a really great theory that says this is not the prime timeline, but an alternate timeline, and whenever they use the spore drive, they don't travel through space, but to other universes. We've kind of discussed that, and it does address what you just said. I hope they do something with that either it's the future or it's another timeline, because I would like them to pull all of it together in this gel with the prime timeline itself at some point. But yeah, so you thought it was maybe time travel. He could just be disoriented. But I do think, I would agree. It's either, if it's not time travel, I think it's an alternate timeline. He didn't really have a lot to do in this, Stamets, specifically.
No, Stamets didn't do much at all in this episode. But, the funny thing is that, like, you've mentioned before that this show, like all Trek, does best when it's an ensemble piece. And most prior Trek shows, various episodes would focus in on between 1 and 3 characters for whatever the adventure is. And this episode was really, about Suru and Ash and Michael. And, the problem with this series is that no matter what group of characters is going to be the focus of the episode, Michael's going to be one of them. And that's where I think they're making their mistake. This should not be Star Trek Michael.
Well, they may go a West Wing route, though they'd catch a lot of hate for it. Because West Wing originally was supposed to be focused on, I forget his name, but one of the characters. And then they saw how well an ensemble case did, so they moved to ensemble. So they could do that. And I'm really hoping that they do. Because, again, as you said, it works great as an ensemble piece. Mm-hmm. But, okay, so moving on, the captain... And again, another great scene by Lorca. I hope people who say that we hate this actually watch this, because we're doing a lot of praise right now. A great scene by Lorca where he's just going off on the Vulcan admiral, and rightfully so, because he's asking, why were we the only ones available? Aren't there other ships? And the Vulcan captain the Vulcan admiral responds in a way that's confusing to me, though, because he says, the other 2 ships that were supposed to be with it got jumped as well. He makes it sound like they're at least somewhat aware that the cloaking devices exist and that they've spread, right? So why are you still letting your ships go it alone? It would seem to me, if you even have an inkling or a concern that cloaking technology or the invisibility screen is becoming wide, I would have all Federation ships travel in packs, because it's really hard. It's harder to destroy a ship if it's traveling with other ships.
Well, and you see, here's the thing: is that, remember, the Admiral did say, because he asked Lorca if the Klingon ships were cloaked and how many of them, and Lorca said all of them, and that's when he said that kind of confirms our theory that the sorry, I keep saying cloak because that's what it is, but the invisibility screens or invisibility whatever has been spread throughout the Empire. And so I think that what was going on was that they had 3 starships in the area, all three of them were jumped simultaneously in a coordinated attack. And so I don't think they knew before that they had all of the all the Klingon ships had cloaking devices, because Discovery is the only ship that survived this whole day. And so that's why they got the valuable intel from Discovery, where basically Lorca was able to confirm that, yes, these were cloaked ships.
Right.
And so that confirms what Starfleet believed was happening, but they didn't know.
So, question coming up. You may know this better than me. Were there not Vulcans in Starfleet during the original series? I think they may be referring back to the episode you and I have talked about, where Spock talks about how there aren't Captain Vulcans and things.
Well, Spock simply says that those types of opportunities are very rare. But no, there are Vulcans in Starfleet. Remember, in the episode of the original series, The Immunity Syndrome, I can't remember the name of the ship, but it was another Starfleet ship that was manned entirely by Vulcans. And so, and Kit Coyote actually just mentioned it in the comics, or in the comments, that there was a Vulcan crewed Constitution class ship. Yes, yes, and thank you. Is the Intrepid. And the Intrepid is one of the original 12 Constitution-class Starfleet vessels. These were not people who were working for the Vulcan, whatever they call the Vulcan fleet. I can't remember what they call it now, but they weren't working for. They were working for Starfleet.
The Vulcan Science Academy?
Well, no, the Science Academy is a school, but I'm trying to remember. I can't remember what the Vulcan ships. I'm not a huge fan of Enterprise, and that's where they really established all that. But so there were at least 400 Vulcans serving in Starfleet at the time of the original series, and that's just from one ship and Spock. And so we could assume pretty safely that there are at least a few more Vulcans in the fleet. The reason the Intrepid was manned entirely by Spocks in non-canon literature is basically that Vulcans do prefer to work with other Vulcans.
Right.
And so Starfleet accommodated them by allowing them to have a Vulcan separatist ship, I guess you could say. But but that's not to say that, Spock was definitely not the first Vulcan in Starfleet, and he was not the only Vulcan in Starfleet.
Right. Well, so I like Lorca. I like how he's going off on this. I guess what you say makes sense. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm still, I don't know. It seems like they may have had more of an inkling, and they let people die unnecessarily, or maybe I guess they could be doing it to confirm. Maybe they had an inkling. They were almost positive, but they needed to confirm before they changed their whole operation. So they basically let these ships go to slaughter, put them in a position where they would get jumped. Which, if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. But I don't know. Again, it's more about Lorca. I like Lorca in this. I think he does a really good job. I think he's legitimately upset. Jason Isaacs, regardless of his politics and what he says and how he treats people who are Trekkies, is a great actor.
Well,
I think he's top notch in my opinion.
Let me say this about that, because I know that we're focusing, of course, on Star Trek Discovery, but I take this to entertainment in general. I do not give a rat's behind about the personal opinions and goings-ons of any of the actors on this or any other show. The fact that Kevin Spacey right now is in a lot of trouble over some of the stuff he did does not detract from the fact that The Usual Suspects is an awesome movie. And so I'm not going to suddenly say, or like Bill Cosby and his crap doesn't mean The Cosby Show wasn't a classic 80s sitcom. People need to, the art is art, and people are douchebags. And if an artist is a douchebag, well, guess what? That's nothing new. That goes all the way back to Beethoven. He was known to be a dick. Right. So, I don't care about Jason Isaacs' politics, considering that he is, in Hollywood. Let's be realistic. 99% of actors are extreme far left crazies, and so I don't listen to them. I don't care to hear I don't care. When Jason Isaacs posts about politics, I don't care.
Right.
But I do like him as Captain Lorca. I think he's great as Captain Lorca, especially this episode, I think, was his best. This and the one where he was held prisoner on the Klingon ship were his two best episodes. Unfortunately, with this episode, is what we've just discussed is pretty much the extent of his his appearance, except for at the very end.
Well, and to get it out of the way, I think you would agree that if they've broken the law or they're horrendous people, they do need to go to jail and never be seen again.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying forgive them either.
I know, but I'm just saying people, how people are.
Yeah, Roman Polanski, and you may not know who he is because you're younger, but Roman Polanski has been living in Europe now for some 30-odd years because he was tried and convicted for statutory rape.
Right, something just happened to your audio.
Okay,
yeah.
Is it working?
No, yeah, but you're really digital and it's hurting my ears.
Okay, I don't know why.
I don't know either. Can you check that?
Is it still doing it?
Yep.
I haven't. On my side, you sound fine. I haven't changed anything in my settings.
Yeah, make sure that's on me. Let me know, guys, in the comments. It's going to take us a minute or two if something's going on. But yeah,
it definitely sounds bad on the live show. I can hear that.
All right, so while you're fixing that, we'll get into the second part where they're on the planet. And this is kind of where it starts to go downhill. Now, here's the interesting piece. When I say it's starting to go downhill, it doesn't mean hill, like the heel of your foot, hill, like an actual hill. When I say it's starting to go downhill, that doesn't mean that it's horrible or that it's the worst thing ever or anything like that. It's just a lot more subpar than the actual the A plot or the war plot. Do you want to try to talk right now? Is that what you're...
Tell me if it...
Yeah, still having issues. So... I might try unplugging your stuff and putting it back in.
Yeah, I'll try disconnecting the call real quick. Stall for a minute.
Right. Well, I'm not going to stall. I'm going to actually talk about it. And you know what I loved, and me and Michael both laughed at it after I pointed this out, is the funny thing is, she's doing a captain's log, or not a captain's log, but she's doing her own personal log while she's down there. If you remember... Hey, you want to try talking real quick?
Yeah, is this any better?
Yeah, it's not the best, but it is better. So
it must be something with Skype then, because...
All right. Well, hold on. Let me try to get you back on. Okay, so we were talking about it, and I thought this was funny. The log. How did you feel about the log that she was doing while she was on the planet?
Again, I'll kind of give her a pass. I did think it was silly that she was recording the log in real time, as saying, "Oh, we've been on the planet for 18 hours," and so wait a minute. While you're hiking through the woods, you're recording your personal log. But it didn't make a lot of sense there. But all the way back to the original series, they'd had episodes that have done that, and in fact, they've had episodes where Kirk would give the captain's log, knowing what's going to happen. Like I can't remember which episode it was now, but I remember there's like you see the crew on the planet, and Captain Kirk is like, captain's log, stardate, whatever. We're on this routine mission. Little did we realize how bad things were going to go so soon. And it's like, okay. So I'll give him a pass on the log, although I did think it was silly. And by the way, Jake Sisko was commenting on what I was talking about earlier. Yeah, Polanski is a rapist, and he's been in hiding. Okay,
let's not. I don't care. I don't want to bring it up.
I understand, but the whole point is that that does not change the fact that Rosemary's Baby is an incredible film that he made. However, the man himself belongs in prison.
Sure. So, but yeah, so to that point, I guess, because I remember they would do captain's logs. It's like, we're facing off against this ship, and it could destroy us at any time. And it's like, so you ran off to your ready room to do this. So yeah, I mean, I can see that making sense. So they're on this planet, which apparently everything hums and makes this just beautiful noise, and it's wondrous, and it just seems they can't figure it out. But they're going to use it as like sonar in space. So they're going to use the planet's vibrations to vibrate into space to show all enemy ships, which makes a lot of sense because Anti-Tracker, you're the one that pointed this out. You can't really use sonar in space since there's no vibrations in space itself. And they were talking about how it gets to space, which made no sense. Right?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, the whole planet, they very, very clearly spell out that everything on the planet vibrates at specific frequencies, which is what creates all these beautiful melodic sounds on the planet, which is fine. That's cool. And then there are the huge spires of crystal that they assume are naturally occurring that could also vibrate out this beautiful sound. And they say that if they could just modify it, they could have the whole planet send out a signal into space. And it's like, you know what? That's where I got to call BS, because you can't have sound travel from the atmosphere into space. And the thing is, and I know Mr. Pete said, well, there are gravity waves and stuff. Yeah, they didn't say anything about gravity waves. They didn't say anything about quantum fields or anything like that. They just said, and they literally said, this was going to create sonar in space.
Right, Michael. It's still occurring, man. Is there? I don't know. Do you think a restart on your computer or something?
Yeah, I'll try that. Give me just a second. And let's see.
All right. So while he's doing that, this is a good time to point out something to you guys while we wait for a moment, though we will still continue. By the way, if you haven't checked out, you should definitively go to patreon.com/lore reloaded, because if you do, tomorrow's video will be available to you. You usually will get a video either a couple hours or a day ahead of time. The name of the video is, I will go ahead and tell you guys, Star Trek Criminals Rise of the Maquis Terrorists. For $1 a month, you can definitely become, so just consider it, something to check out. Like he was saying, so they're on this planet. This planet has vibrations. And, the thing I do enjoy about this specific interaction is we learn a lot more about Saru. I do enjoy the interactions between Saru, between Michael, between Ash. I think there was good interaction at that point. I thought it did really, really well. So, yeah, J.G. Simmons says, this is just a ploy by Lore to do the show by myself. It's true. It's true. They made Saru really feel a lot more as a person. I sincerely thought they were going to kill him off this time. I honest to God, did think they were going to kill him off. But so they come into a dialogue with the planet, I guess. So they show all of these different spores and things of that nature, and so Saru is able to talk to it. It was really interesting to me because I was wondering why wasn't they interacting with the other beings? I was really interested in that specifically. Why would only Saru be the one? And I get first contact protocol and everything, but the aliens themselves don't know about first contact protocol. So another thing is I do enjoy the interactions between Saru and the others when he talks about his species, how they can run X fast, where they can sense things. Though him talking about his threat ability to receive threats and know what's coming, we never saw that in the last episode with Harry Mudd, which I always thought was kind of interesting, right? So he has this threat detection ability, and yet he can't pick it up with Mudd. I don't know what's going on there. Yeah, Saru's people are professional prey. By the way, yeah, the naming concept of the video I was talking about is just a naming concept itself. You should check out the video and see if you agree if they are or are not. Anti-Trekker's back.
Okay, I'm so...
oh, that is 10 times better. I don't know what you did, but... oh, dude, so much better.
All right, give me just... the video should start in a second here. I'm
fantastic.
Loading up XSplit.
Yeah, and G.G. Simmons, his threat detection is dependent on the needs of plot. Yes, it is. Because I was just talking about that before you got back on. Harry Mudd didn't do anything. As soon as he saw that, his threat detection should have been going off, in theory, right?
Right, it should have gone off as soon as he saw the space whale.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
and we're just waiting for you to get back. And
you should have the video now, right?
Yeah, I'm bringing it up now. So we were talking about how specifically, they meet the aliens and the aliens interact with Saru. My question to you, curiously enough, is why didn't the aliens attempt to interact with the other two? Now, I get that first contact protocol says for him, but the aliens don't know that. So why didn't they come back and say, hey, let's try to have a conversation with everybody, being that they don't know what the respectabilities are?
Well, I would guess that the Saru thing was that he was obviously more sensitive to their sonic emissions. And so, maybe they detected that.
Okay.
I'm just saying, that's a possibility.
Sure. How did you like?
And by the way, just so that I think it was Jake Sisko was asking, it's 24 miles per hour or 11 meters per second, if you care. But anyway,
how did you like? How did you like the planet being alive for all intents and purposes? I didn't hate it. I think it's on par with other aliens we've seen in Trek, so it's not a huge deal. But what was your thoughts on it?
Well, as a concept, I wasn't against it, but they didn't do that. And that's the thing, they kind of conflicted within, and this is another, I've gone off on the writing of this show a few times, but this is just one more example where the writers, I think, got a little confused and didn't know what they were doing, because on the one hand, Saru says, oh, the whole planet is alive, but then he starts talking about the life forms as if they were individual sentient beings. And so if it's either the planet or it's individual beings, it's not both. Right. And so I think that they kind of conflicted that, and plus the weird glowy space alien thing, occasionally took vaguely humanoid shapes, and there were clearly more than one of them. So as a concept, the living planet idea I don't have a problem with, but I don't think that's what we were experiencing here.
Do you think they could be like the and maybe you just addressed this because I was reading something while you were talking. Do you think they could be like the changelings, where they're both one and different at the same time? You know what I'm saying? Because the changelings could be both one and something different.
Right. When they were together in the Great Link, they were technically one entity. It could be something like that, but unless they get into it, we won't really know. And what?
It's not bad. It's stillable, but right now you have like a Jean-Luc Picard Locutus thing going on. It's kind of funny.
Resistance is futile.
Yeah. Okay. So, then it switches back over to the female Klingon, and again we're still reading everything, which I absolutely can't stand. I wish they would move away from that. But you have the female Klingon. I forget who she is. She's Vok's lover. And she's trying to get in the good graces of the Klingon there, but it's all just some form of trickery. And she gets to the Admiral, and she talks to the Admiral, and she tells the Admiral she's going to help to escape. My wife brought this up, and I agreed with it. I thought that was all a part of the plan, too, right? Because she was talking about how adept she was as an interrogator. I thought it was all going to be this big reveal where she tries to get on the ship, where she tries to gain her trust, but is at the entire time still on his side getting information.
Well, and that's another thing that, again, the writing seems to, I think they kept getting ideas and then going back on their own ideas. Because, I agree. I think it would have been more interesting if that was simply, they basically say, she's such a good interrogator that she's devised this whole plan to say, hey, we're going to escape. I could even see them getting on the ship and talking about stuff and then, beaming back, or, getting captured by the Klingons at the last second and then put her back in her cell, and then she just reports to the captain everything. But basically they made her out to be kind of incompetent, because she was genuinely trying to defect and then screwed up, and then apparently at least killed the Admiral to cover up her tracks. And that's assuming, we don't know for sure that she's dead, but it looked
he actually
like...
says so. He actually says you let her escape at the end. The big bad red...
No, but they were just talking about the fact that they were in the hallway.
Oh,
Remember,
I thought specifically they were
no,
talking about.
he said you because he said she escaped you, and then she said only briefly, and then I caught her.
Ah, gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, she's not dead. That's obvious. There's no way.
Well, it's possible, and I mean I wouldn't put it past them, but if she, because here's the thing. The way that she killed the admiral in quotation marks, assuming the admiral's dead, was to ram her up against what looked like some kind of power coupling or something. And if that particular power coupling was not something that would kill somebody, you would think the other two Klingons standing right there would know it.
Right.
And she just dropped. And even when we see at the end later on, when she's putting her in the room and she discovers the bodies of all her fallen comrades, she's just dragging her in like she's a piece of meat. So it didn't seem like and there was nobody else around, so it didn't seem like she was doing it just to, make people think that she was still alive. Now, it is entirely possible that she's still alive and all that, but who knows? I think that
it's too easy, don't you think?
Well, I want to know what her motivation is to defect, other than she doesn't like this one guy. And what's the name of the albino again? Volk? Did you say? Or
yeah, Volk.
Volk is the albino, or Volk is the? I get their names mixed up.
He's the albino.
Okay, so we haven't seen him since he was supposedly taken to the matriarchs.
Right, which is why everybody thinks he's Ash, which I still don't, by the way.
Yeah, and the thing is, if he's not Ash, they're going to have to come up with a pretty darn good explanation as to why he just kind of disappeared. Okay. Because there's no reason for him to just, we took her to the matriarchs and now he's just like partying with them.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get that. I wouldn't be surprised, based on this writing, if Volk doesn't save the day in the next episode. If the Discovery isn't getting the living hell beat out of it, Volk comes in, is able to either disable or destroy the ship, and then saves the day. And then helps them stop the war.
Or Ash is Volk, and during the battle... Sure it does.
Sorry. No, it doesn't. He had multiple... Okay. I tell you what, I'll let you finish. Continue on.
Ash is Volk. Because let's be real, the Discovery is clearly outmatched by the Klingon sarcophagus ship. And we see in the trailer for next week that they're going to be fighting. So then Ash comes up with a brilliant scheme exploiting the weaknesses of that ship, because he knows the ship so well, because he served on it for so long.
Yeah, I don't know. When Mudd was doing what he was doing, he had a chance to take the ship. He's the security officer with unlimited access to steal the ship. He has all these incidences. I don't know why he's not taking advantage of. If he stole this ship and returned it, he would instantly become leader again and win the war. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I don't know. Maybe he'll turn out being it. It just doesn't, for me, make sense.
Right. But no, I think it should have been a fake out as far as her trying to get her. I think that they sold the Klingon short there.
Okay. Yeah, and it would have made her the best interrogator, kind of like we were talking about, So now we have the love story between Michael and Ash, which is continuing along with the first kiss, and I was really...
Well, you see, and that explains what my theory, though. Okay. Michael is a Mary Sue or Michael Sue, correct? We all agree on that for the most part. So her kiss with Ash touched his soul so much that he is now going to betray the Klingon Empire and help them defeat his own ship. Okay. Because he loves Michael so much. The war is saved through the power of love. Come on.
This was so stupid. This was so stupid to me. The whole Ash was like, let's not stop all this killing and death so you don't have to go be in a prison. Just stupid. Maybe you can justify when he was talking with Saru that he wants to make him pay, and that's why he wants the war to continue. That makes sense to me. But it's whole, let's just keep the war going so that you and I can continue to, have babies, was just ridiculous to me. I'm sorry. Even if Michael wasn't a Michael Sue or wasn't a Mary Sue, it's you don't generally continue wars based on one person, even if.
Oh, come on, sure you do.
No,
Just
that's
think,
ridiculous.
there's been so many great movies about people who would, continue to fight in a major war that destroys two great civilizations just so they get a booty call.
The Iliad, I guess. Was it the Iliad?
See?
The Odyssey? Whatever. Yeah. But all those people are dead, so it didn't work out for them, did it? All right. That was just stupid. I couldn't stand that. Then, the next... I like,
But,
again... Go ahead.
Well, let me say this, though. I agree with you that little conversation was stupid. But one thing that I will give them some credit for on this show, comparing this to Star Trek as a whole, is that at least they are not being stupid and immature about sexual relations like they had been in Next Generation and DS9 and Enterprise. Because, and time after time in those shows, they treat sex like it's some kind of, like they're 12-year-olds writing the shows sometimes. Look at the whole thing with Worf and Dax. It was just stupid. So at least they're handling the relationships on the show, I think, with a little bit of maturity. I think that Stamets and the Doctor, I think their relationship seems like a realistic one. I think that while the lines about love in this episode where they were willing to where Ash was willing to continue the war, that was stupid, but they're not just like tee hee hee, we're gonna jump in the sack and show you some side boob like we do with 7 of 9. They're not doing stupid little things like that. They're not just gratuitously trying to throw in sexual content just to throw it in. Ironic considering what they did with the F-bomb a couple episodes ago, but
So, to address kind of some of the things that are going on in the chat, here's my point. Ash right now is of sound, assuming he's not Vogue or whatever, is of sound body and mind, and is beyond having this puppy love. Thinking correctly. So he might say, hey, maybe the captain will save you, will run off, something like that I can see. But not letting tens of thousands of people die, especially in the last episode where he does this whole, we must remember everybody, we must be there for everybody, oh my God, all these soldiers, we must honor them. Now, maybe in like the heat of passion or the moment, let's say that at the end of this episode, he had the option of activating the sonar in space, but Michael would die, or choosing Michael over the sonar in space. It's cliche, but it makes sense in the heat of a moment. Someone's emotions might override their common sense.
Well,
that I get. But
right. If I were writing that particular scene when she was talking about basically that once the war's over, she's just going back to prison because she was sentenced to life in prison. Assuming for a second that Ash is not Vogue, and his intentions are genuine and he's really human, then what I would have written him to say is something to the effect of, well, maybe because of all your contributions to the war, they'll commune your sentence or something. Maybe they'll let you come back to Starfleet because you've proven yourself or something like that.
Or will run. I mean, Ash seems impulsive to me. So
right. But you see, that's one reason why I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's Vogue, because what do Klingons love? Klingons love war, and so hey, if we can keep this war going, you and I can stay together, because he loves war, but he loves Michael because Michael's perfect in every way.
I don't.
So
that doesn't even suit Vox purposes, in my opinion. But I mean, all right. So we continue on. Tilly is fast becoming a favorite character of mine in this show. I love the fact that she knows something's up with Stamets. The Tilly I think that we first meet in episode 1 would probably be very timid and back off, but after...
That'd be pretty impressive considering she didn't show up till episode 3.
Well, whatever. Episode... You know what? I honestly don't consider the first two... I honestly don't. But episode 3. But, Stamets gets on to her. She has a good relationship with Stamets, so she comes up and she says, what are you doing? Why are you acting like this? Something's up. Why are you yelling at me? He tries to blow her off. He even pulls rank on her, and she just stays there and, faces him. And I love that about Tilly. Like you said, I think if they continued this and not continue her as much as the comedic relief, This is Tilly becoming a captain, because that seems like something a captain would do, not back down, even when someone pulls rank, if it's something that needs to be done. And I think it's a good interaction between Stamets and Tilly, the conversation itself.
Well, I agree. I think this was Tilly's best episode by a long shot, and it's because they treated her character seriously for the first time, really. They've been, I mean, like the first episode, yeah, she was straight up just a joke with her social awkwardness and her snoring and all that. And they toned it down a little bit after a couple of episodes, but this one, she is a serious cadet. She no longer feels out of place in the crew. Because up until this point, I'm like, why is if she is this socially awkward, because I know they say she's not stupid, she's just socially awkward, but if she's this socially awkward, what is she doing on a starship?
Right.
It doesn't make any, and especially as a cadet, and I know, like Ian even mentioned it in the chat, but yeah, and I talked about it last week, there's no logical reason that she should be a cadet on a starship. She should be an ensign. But even putting that aside, she's this newcomer to Starfleet. Great. She's ambitious. Great. She's talented. Great. Now let's make her be annoying in every way we can possibly think of. Why?
Right.
And they've dialed that back, and now she's coming through as an interesting character, which I like. I do, unfortunately, just like with, this was her best episode, this was Lorca's best episode, and both of them were in this episode very sparsely.
Right, and I agree with that. And moving into the conversation with Stamets, I didn't completely buy his reasoning or why he didn't want to tell anyone, because this is only going to blow up in your face, right? And here's my one thing. First off, the reason he doesn't want to tell his doctor is the exact reason that the doctors should not be having relationships with the people that they have patients with. But the other thing, is this the only doctor on that ship? You're telling me they only have one doctor on that? That's like Voyager level stupid. You need more than just one doctor on a ship, especially the ship that goes out to fight everybody.
Right.
So it would seem to me there should be other personnel that he could talk to, and they're not. And the other thing is I guess I could get maybe from his reasoning he's not thinking clearly. Lorca's not going to let them transfer him off, and the Starfleet is not going to transfer him off if he's the only way to win the war.
Stamets' argument, I think, is weak one, and the thing is that first of all, Starfleet already knows that he's injected himself, and they're permitting it. And I think they're permitting it simply because of the importance of the discovery. So they did find out about what he did as far as injecting himself with the tardigrade DNA. And so that would be the reason they'd cut him up in a lab anyway. But now he's saying, well, if Starfleet finds out, well, Starfleet knows. The Admiralty knows about it.
Well, they don't know he's being adversely affected. But
maybe not, but the thing is they know he's done it, and they're still allowing him to do it because of how crucial the Discovery mission is.
Right.
And so I would say that, he should go to the doctor, although, you're right as far as the inappropriateness of the doctor's relationship, and that's why in the real military there are rules against fraternization that.
No, Michael. As everyone is going to say in the comments, the Federation is not the United States military, so you can't ever reference a real-life military because it's not.
Right. First of all, the Federation is not. Starfleet is. But the...
whatever.
But I'm sorry, but and I know people like to say it's not really the military. If it's not the military, then show me who is.
Right. Well, what I love is in the comments they're like, well, it's not the United States military.
Well, yeah, that's because the United States is on one planet.
That's true. But I mean, it's written by Americans who know the U.S. military, and the Federation is completely based off of a republic democracy, which is what the U.S. Anyway, it's silly that people even.
Right.
All right, so moving right along. But again, and people are saying there are other doctors, so there's no reason he shouldn't go to other doctors and talk.
Well, it would make a starship. I mean, even Dr. McCoy on the original series was not the only doctor. He was just the chief medical officer on the ship. And they had other doctors that they've shown. Like they actually have one guy, I can't remember his name, but it was a black guy who's a specialist on Vulcans. And so when Spock had some problems, he was the one that showed up. But for some reason, the next time Spock had a problem, I guess he didn't. But but yeah, they established early on that Dr. McCoy's not the only doctor, Dr. Crusher's not the only doctor. The only exception to that is Voyager, because for some dumbass reason, Voyager had one doctor who gets killed, and then they have a hologram. And they don't even have any nurses on Voyager.
Right.
That whatever. So Voyager was kind of the weird one. Enterprise also, I don't know if there was, I think Dr. Phlox was the only doctor on Enterprise, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was training a couple of nurses. He was training people.
But at least
that one I almost believe, though.
Yeah, at least on that one I could buy it, because Enterprise had a much smaller crew, only had like 100 crew, compared to I don't know if they've said how many's on Discovery. We know a Constitution class has about 400 in the Kirk era, so you would need more than one doctor to take care of 400 people, especially in a combat zone. But Discovery is, I know they try to say it's a science warship, whatever. It's a ship that's purposefully going into the front lines of this war. So yeah, they would need to have a full medical staff.
Right.
Not just a doctor. But even so, assuming that, and do you remember what the doctor's name is? Because I hate calling him just the doctor. I can't remember what his name is.
From which
series? From Discovery.
From Discovery? No, I forget his name. Okay.
But at least, if he's the chief medical officer, that's fine. He happens to be in a romantic relationship with Stamets. Stamets should still, if he doesn't feel comfortable going to him because of their intimate relationship, then he should simply say, hey, I got a problem. Who would you recommend I talk to about, possible side effects with these spores? And, then everything should be on the up and up. There's no reason to hide it. And by the way, I'm still waiting. We're now 1 week away from the half-season finale, and we still have had only one reference to those stupid black badges that they introduced in episode 3.
Right. Well, they may not bring them up at all.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so they say the ship has a crew of 136.
Okay.
But still, it's the most important ship on the line. I can't see them not having more than just one doctor, in my opinion. So let's go to the B plot, which was the weaker plot. Let's go back to that. The planet.
Well, the planet was the A plot. That's
okay.
It just felt like a B plot.
Yeah, it's the B plot to me. It'll always be a B. So the interesting thing about that, though, is I like what they did with Saru in this way. So Saru is interacting with these aliens. He's apparently the only one that can or is willing to. And eventually he starts acting weird, right? He walks in to both Ash and Michael, and he says, hey, been talking to the captain. The aliens set it up so that we can talk to them much further away. Everything's going to be great. Can I have your communicators? First off, that's step number one that would seem off to me. Mm-hmm. I would not be as willing to give my communicator away just on a lark. The other thing is if he's going to be smart about it, he shouldn't have crushed him. He should have just put him away.
Right.
But we had to have that. I liked that you don't know what's going on, and you think the aliens are specifically causing this issue with him. I do like that is actually occurring to him, and it makes it seem like he's under the aliens' influence.
Well, but here's the problem I have with all that, and I know you hate me jumping around to later plot points, but we do find out later.
No. We're going to talk. At this point, did you have an issue with it?
Well, under the assumption that, I know someone mentioned the spores from this side of paradise, that's exactly what came into my mind, was that he got spored. And that the only reason they didn't say spores was because they have a spore warp drive. So, but yeah, that's exactly what I thought. And at that point, I didn't have a problem with it. I did have a problem with it later on, though.
Okay, so so they're thinking of ways to get out of it. I just don't want to talk about that just yet, because there's one piece with Michael that I hated, where she gets all uppity again. It's like, there's this war and people are dying, but we can't do it. It's first contact. We have to get their approval, and we're just going to have to stay here because we have to wait and just get off. First off, we assume that Saru has been infected by these aliens. That's hostile intent. First contact wouldn't apply, in my opinion, at that point. They're being hostile, we can respond in kind. At least up to the point to free our crewmen, right? And then Ash pulls rank like he should, and he says, this gotta happen, this is what's happening. And so then we get to the conversation, and ultimately you find out that Saru isn't under the influence of the aliens. The aliens have just removed a crucial part of him, that his race is always in constant fear. And so at this point, he's keeping them there against their will so that he doesn't ever have to live in constant fear again. And what was your, you said, what are your issues with that exactly?
Because, okay, on the one hand, I like that idea, right? That I get that Saru's race constantly lives in fear, and what an incredible liberating thing that would be if you're living under fear of something for your entire life and all of a sudden that's removed. And so obviously he would want to stay. Now, I would buy that he would stay on that planet in a heartbeat. However, given what we know of Saru, and granted, we've only gotten to know him for 7 episodes, but how well we do know his character. If he had some incredible motivation to stay on the planet, I don't think he would force Michael and Ash to stay as well. I don't think he would say, like if, for example, when he says, "Well, there are some parameters of the mission that have changed. I need to stay." And rather than crush their communicators and say, "Ha ha ha, we're all staying. You can't contact the ship now." That made no sense if he's not under the influence of aliens. Because if he is thinking of if he has a sound mind, except that he simply, is no longer afraid, and to him that's absolute paradise, then he would just say, "I'm not leaving."
Do you think maybe... Because he points out that he's afraid that they'll destroy the planet, that the Klingons will destroy the planet if they find out. Do you think maybe he is, as someone put in the comments, kind of intoxicated by this and is afraid that even if he lets them go, they're going to talk him into it and that the planet will be destroyed and he'll no longer be able to run from his fear?
But you see, even then, it would be more logical to say they can't help. And I have to stay.
Lorca wouldn't stand for that.
Maybe not, but that's, I think, what Saru would try to do.
You don't think he knows Lorca?
Well, but keep in mind that if he, since apparently in 10 years before Captain Kirk, Federation starships can't beam you up through cloud cover, so all he'd have to do is destroy his own communicator and equipment and then run around at 80 miles an hour to areas that have, clouds.
Okay.
And then they couldn't beam him up. No, I think that his motivation was correct, but his action was inconsistent with his character that we've seen so far. Lorca would not have destroyed their communicators and basically become and literally attacked Burnham quite aggressively. And I'm sorry, 80 kilometers per hour. I know. Sorry. With all that he was doing, that was so out of character. He's not a violent person.
Right.
And so, think about it. If you are inherently a non-violent person, and then somebody gives you this incredible, perfect mansion that's perfect in every way, and whatever your ultimate fantasy is, it's there. And then someone says, "Okay, time to go." You're not going to suddenly punch him in the face. You're going to say, "I'm not leaving."
Right. So someone brought this up. What do you think about the green lie detector or whatever that was?
What was that?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's like, "Hey, put your hand on this Jello with an LED light in it, and you'll want to stay." Apparently,
or maybe it was, I don't know, because he was talking about, and I think
it looks like kryptonite to me.
Ash was talking about how he couldn't let go, that he wanted all Klingons to suffer, and that is something I would understand of why he would want to keep the war going on, and why.
Well, and that's also why he's Vogue.
Right? No, it's not
because Vogue would want all Klingons to suffer after that.
They just want to be left alone. They just want to have a homage. So. But yeah, he's like, "Let's put your hand on this." He's like, "You've been lying to me." I almost expected him to get the heck beat out of him at that point.
Right.
But that brings up another point. So it switches over, right? It switches over to Michael setting up the beacon to get away. And here's my question to you. So, and I pointed this out while we're watching it. Why? So she turns around and she sees him there, right?
Yeah.
Why couldn't she continue to work on the whatever she's doing, the transmitter, take out her weapon on stun, and play target practice while he's coming up on her?
Because she's perfect in every way except for when the writers don't want her to be.
You see what I'm saying? Why wouldn't it make any sense? Yeah, if you see him running across, that just means that I get to stun him from far away.
Right.
Thank you for giving away your position.
Well, and the thing is that, like, okay, so she knows he can run 80 kilometers per hour. She sees him up on the ridge. She knows he's coming. And so what any rational person would do, at least in my mind, is, okay, stay by the communications beacon, take out your weapon. You know he's coming from that direction. Let's wait for him to come out of the bushes, and as soon as he comes out, start blasting him at stun. And then once he's down, continue your transmission, then go over, render first aid if necessary, and try to talk him down. With the way she did it, where it's like, oh, he's going to come from over there.
Right.
That made no sense.
I thought at first maybe she wasn't going to shoot her friend, which is stupid to me because of a stun setting, but okay. Whatever. But no, she has no qualms. As soon as he gets where he can stop her, then the gun comes out. I love that she pulls out the phaser as soon as he's in a position to knock her down. Because that makes a ton of sense, you know?
Right.
And that's just silly to me. But I do like the reveal. I like the fact that, and I know you don't necessarily agree with it, but I think it's cool that at least they turned it on its head. He's not under... It is him, even if you could justify it being intoxicating or not wanting to have that feeling, which I could understand. It's not the aliens, right? It is him doing that, which I think is a turn on that old cliche. So I did like that part. So she knocks him out, or actually, interestingly, the aliens help out, which I thought was really cool. Somehow they apparently have teleporter technology, so they bring... Ash over, which you have no idea what happens to him. Going back for a second, and we talked about this for a moment, instead of trying to talk with him and saying, hey, you know, let's talk about our feelings and everything, he has the rifle right in front of him. I assume that rifle has a stun setting. Again, once he walked in and asked, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm just modifying this so that it'll knock you out in one shot, and then fire it on him.
Right. It made no sense that they were trying to placate Saru without weapons ready, because they knew that Saru was up to something. He had already destroyed their communicators, and so at that point, it's like, okay, our priority should be to incapacitate Saru and then communicate with the Discovery.
Right, and even worst case, because I tried to worst case scenario this, oh, they're worried about the aliens, because if they knock him out, maybe there's some kind of symbiotic and the aliens get mad. But even then, it still makes sense if he comes up, knocks him out, because even if the aliens got mad about that, the aliens would still be focused on Ash, right?
Right.
So she would still be able to get it out. I mean, it would suck. Ash would probably be having a bad day if they were malevolent, but still, you know, at that point it would have made sense. Knock him out and then hope to God that stun settings work on an entire planet. But
it's not really an entire planet.
They are. They're a part of the planet. That's what it said.
Whatever.
Okay, so she gets a hold of the Discovery, and this is where everything has been going great up until this point, right? So they beam back aboard or whatever, and lo and behold, first off, Klingon Mick Red Striped Face figures out that the female...
Cole, I think it is, isn't it?
Whatever.
Cole, K-O-L.
Cole, okay. Cole figures out that she betrayed them, and so he goes through this whole song and dance with her. You know, do you want to become a part of us? Puts red on her face, and he's like, I knew you were lying to me. Seems like an entire waste of his time, but I mean, whatever gets your rocks off, I suppose.
By the way, I know this is a little off topic here, but that freeze frame you had up there with Michael holding the hand phaser, I do want to give credit where credit is due. I complain a lot about the aesthetics of the show. That hand phaser looks awesome. That looks like a modernized version of the classic hand phaser, which, I happen to have one right here. This is the original design, and if you look at what she's holding there, it looks like an updated version of this, which I think is really cool. Anyway, but back to Cole's little thing. Yeah, that again, the writers seem to have this really bizarre conflict. Like it's like it was written by two people who had two very different ideas. One was that she's going to join Cole's crew, and the other is that she's not. And then they both got to write every other line in the scene. It didn't make any sense. As far as the writers just seem to be having a fight with themselves on this one.
Right. I'd be interested. We should go back and see if there's multiple writers or if there was a rewrite done, which is why it seems so kind of off. So anyway, they get back on the ship, and so the planet is supposed to be able to make all of them, detectable at this point. And of course, the planet decides, hey, we all need to be friends, so let's invite everyone. What I enjoy about that is the fact that the Klingons call all of the planets the same name as the humans, so that makes everything easier to understand. So thank God for that. But so I thought maybe, and they still might, but I doubt it. I thought maybe it was going to be an Organian situation, where they call them in and the planet says, you guys can't fight anymore. And now they have to do whatever. But it doesn't seem like it's going to do that based on it. This seems like a lot of work and a lot of effort for, cloaking technology, whatever, invisible shielding technology, whatever they call it. That's a very bad thing. And that's something that is going to have to be dealt with. But I don't think it is the silver bullet to the Federation. The Federation is going to lose a lot more people, but they just got to change their tactics, right? If cloaking is giving an advantage, you just send more ships on patrol. And you use the Discovery to hit more like you said, okay, you're going to start using cloaked ships, and that's really causing us some damage. Let's see what happens when we drop a nuclear device on Kronos, and see if you want to continue to use cloaking technology.
Right.
So that would only escalate it, and even if they didn't have the Discovery, I just think you change your tactics.
Yeah, it doesn't. The cloaking technology. The problem is, and you mentioned this right before we watched the episode tonight, is not only is this cloaking technology, but it's perfect cloaking technology. It's superior to anything we've had in the original series when the Romulans first introduced cloaks. You could still detect the motion of a ship, and you could plot what direction it was heading. You just couldn't plot its exact location, and you couldn't see it. By the time we got to the film era, like Star Trek III, which is the first time in prior canon that the Klingons had any kind of cloaking device, you could actually see the ship while cloaked as a distortion in space. And that's how they figured out there was a cloaked ship right there when Grissom was missing. By Next Generation, the cloaks became better, but you could still detect that there was something out there. You just couldn't pinpoint it or anything like that.
And the distortion, it was a lot better, but you could still somewhat see a distortion. There was some episodes where they were trying to look and would see it off just a little bit. So there was still a little bit of a distortion too.
Yeah, and so so now we have cloaking technology more advanced than anything that Next Gen had during a time period prior to the original series, in the hands of a race that never had any reference to them having cloaking technology until about 20 years after the original series.
Right.
And so it's kind of a canonical mess as far as what they're doing with the cloaking technology. Now, even if, let's say that hypothetically, with the next episode, somehow Discovery manages to disable or at least repel the Klingon crypt ship, and then they convince the aliens to allow them to do their space sonar that makes no sense, and so now that cloak is completely useless to the Klingons. So the cloaking technologies we see later is because they had to adapt to something different because their perfect cloak doesn't work. Then why was there no mention of it ever?
Right.
You know. And like, in fact, I remember, and one thing that was really cool in the Balance of Terror episode, which is one of the best episodes of the original series, but in that episode, they made it very clear that this was the first time they've ever heard of a ship being invisible.
Right.
And
they never brought that up, and like, oh, like. Kind of, yeah. I mean, I think we even brought that up, like in the Balance of Terror. They'd be like, "Wow, this is just like what happened during the Klingon War, not 20 years ago."
Right.
But yeah.
And Spock even said, "Yes, I remember when my sister was trying to help to disable the Klingon cloaks. I'm trying to remember how she did it. You know, hey, why don't we design a space sonar?" You know?
That's true. I mean, Spock would be like, he must never have talked to his half sister, nor even been a part of the Klingon War, though he was alive, or heard about it at any point in the whatever. Okay. So anyway, so the planet's like, hey, we all got to be friends, kumbaya, let's bring everybody together. The sarcophagus ship shows up. Oh my God, we're all about to die. Roll credits, and then they show the battle scene happening. I don't know. I don't know how that's going to end or how they're going to do it. I do think that all of this will make sense if they make this an alternate reality, but beyond that, I don't know what they intend to do or how they. I would be interested. So this is a perfect cloak. How did they reverse engineer that? Because it seems like an ancient technology that was lost to time.
Right. Because that's the thing, that the sarcophagus ship was wrecked for decades before this particular war started, and they were the only ship to have this cloak. And now, within a matter of weeks, every Klingon ship has that same technology. So it's like, oh yeah, you know what you got to do? You just take a AA battery and you plug it into a standard pocket calculator, and it becomes a cloaking device. And they're like, oh, why didn't we know that? Too bad, you know. I mean, how is it that they have this technology that they could replicate so quickly on every ship?
Someone brought up, I think it's funny, he never brought it up or talked about it because she decided to become Cybok.
Yeah. So she's going to be transgender, and then But Cybok is actually Vulcan, where she's human. So, you know, unless she had she's transspecial, I guess. Which, you know, they haven't done that yet, so why not?
Right.
But yeah, there's so many problems here as far as canon that it's laughable. I think the only way you can write your way out of this corner would literally be if Q showed up and said, "I'm going to erase all your memories of the war."
Right. Or it just ends the last episode. Spock wakes up. He's like, "I didn't know."
Wow, that was quite a dream.
Yeah, I didn't know Vulcans could dream. Next episode looks like it's going to be action packed. Looks like we're going to see a lot of destruction and death. Do you have any ideas of how it's going to end? What are your thoughts? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, it does look like next episode is going to be a more action-y episode, which is fine. I'm okay with that. You know, just like some of the best episodes of the original series were action episodes, Balance of Terror being one of them. And, you know, if they do it well, that's great. The problem is that this setup doesn't really give much compelling reason for the battle, only that, oh, by the way, the aliens invited them.
Right.
You know, and, you know, obviously when the ship shows up, and here's the stupid thing. So now I know why they're going to fight. They're going to fight because, you know, Michael said, oh, we have to protect them because they're peaceful, loving aliens
like
that
hell.
hit. Huh?
I said like hell. Go on.
Right. And so she's going to convince Lorca that they have to defend these poor defenseless aliens, even though the Klingons would have no reason to be hostile to them.
Right.
You know, I would say, and you know, the the Discovery is hopelessly outmatched, but the ship can also teleport around at will. And it did look like part of the battle sequence is going to involve them doing lots and lots of spore jumps, which is going to probably knock Stamets for a loop.
Right.
But I don't know. And I'm sure that, I can't remember her name, but the female Klingon is going to be a critical part to it, as far as maybe sabotaging the Klingon ship or something like that.
What do you think about maybe the Admiral somehow saving the day as well and being like, Lorca, we do need you here. Michael told me so.
Yeah, that could be.
Not reporting him.
And of course, we do know that at some point Michael is going to duel with Cole, which looks laughably stupid. I like. They're just trying to make her too much of a badass. That's the problem. Is that she can't be the best botanist, the best quantum mechanic, the best general science officer, and by the way, she's also the greatest martial arts expert since Neo from The Matrix. And it's just. When they tone her down, her character makes more sense. But whenever they have her doing these improbable things that, oh yeah, she just happens to be the best in the universe at this too, that's when they lose me. And it looks like what they're going to end up doing is having her fight a Klingon that's a good foot taller than her in a hand-to-hand duel, and of course she's not going to die, and which she should die like instantly in a fight like that, and she'll probably end up winning.
Right.
And that's just going to be stupid. Honestly, if that's how this episode resolves itself, is her challenging him to an honor duel and he accepts and then she kicks his butt, I'm going to be like rolling my eyes at it.
She'll get beat like for the first 20 minutes and then get a lucky shot, as is the custom for the cliche.
Right. But keep in mind, she actually, in the first episode, accidentally impaled a Klingon warrior on his own bat'leth. And it's like, so you have this guy who's trained in combat. This would be like if you, to think of the Klingons and the way they are with their bat'leths, think of a samurai. And a samurai and his katana, they are one. The katana is the soul of the samurai, and they train for years and years and years to perfect their skills with the samurai. And then you trip over a rock, bump into the samurai, and he stabs himself in the gut with it.
Right.
That's what they did in the first episode of this series. And and then after she does that, then she also beat up another Klingon on the ship who had the drop on her. So I think Quark did accidentally. The Klingons must be just the worst fighters in the galaxy, because they Quark and Michael Burnham killed them by accidentally impaling them.
Also, you reminded me of when Quark and his brother stole the cloaking device. I don't know if you ever saw that, but they stole the cloaking device from the Klingon capital ship, the main ship, not Gowron's ship, but Martok's ship. And so the cloaking device is still cloaked while they're carrying it, right? And so it's funny because they're carrying nothing, so it's cloaked while they're carrying it, which makes a lot of sense. Let me tell you.
Although I will say this, is that at least when Quark killed that Klingon dude, and you're right, it was a Dak-Tak, not a bat'leth, but at least when Quark did that, the Klingon was drunk out of his mind, and so this Klingon was on duty and prepared for battle,
right?
And so that made no sense. But I'm
just saying the Klingons don't have the best reputation either, because two Ferengi stole a cloaking device and off the ship, which apparently isn't as hard as it can do. But you want to know something, guys? If you'd like this, don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe and watch it. Like I said beforehand, my video may actually be live for tomorrow. It is Star Trek Criminals.
Wow,
Rise of the Maquis terrorists. If you want to see that early, definitely go to patreon.com/Lore Reloaded. And for as low as $1, you can, in fact, watch that video early right now. If not, you'll see it tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. Beyond that, don't forget to check me out on Twitter, twitter.com/Lore Reloaded. If you have not voted for what genre you want me to get a tattoo in, you should soon, because we're going to be changing it up. We'll be hitting that next marker really, really soon. Now we're at the point where I want to say, guys, I want to thank you so much for watching the Lore Reloaded. But I'm also going to stay here and continue to talk like an idiot, because it'll cut me off early if it doesn't. And so now I'm going to sit here and talk about my day, because I got to do the Tuesday video coming up soon. Do that. That's probably going to be Star Wars, because I'm trying to get that sweet, sweet Star Wars view from the movie that's coming out and the game that's coming out. But I'm not even going to be buying that game because it doesn't have Ahsoka. And if it
You
doesn't
should
have
do
Ahsoka,
Thor Ragnarok.
no, yeah, I should do Thor Ragnarok too, even though I know even less about that than I know about other stuff. But, it's whatever. It's, get that sweet, sweet, sweet cheese, as they say.